Some are calling it the revolt of the spies. But here's what we know so far is provided by my first guest. Intelligence analysts at the U.S. military Central Command have formally complained that their reports on ISIS and al-Qaeda's branch in Syria were inappropriately altered by senior officials. So what was done with the manipulated intel, and what are the potential ramifications for the fight against militant Islamics and for the White House's strategy going forward? Journalist Shane Harris is the reporter who broke the story and lays it all out in an exclusive piece for the Daily Beast entitled 50 Spies Say ISIS Intelligence Was Cooked. He's also the author of At War, The Rise of the Military Internet Complex. Shane joins me from Washington, D.C. right now. All right, Shane, who are these spies?
Well, these are actually analysts who work at U.S. Central Command, which is based in Florida. And Central Command is the military command that runs the airstrikes in the war against ISIS and al-Qaeda's branch in Syria, and also against ISIS in Iraq. And these are people who work every day studying the movements of ISIS and al-Qaeda, their relative strength, their weaknesses, and kind of the insides, as much as we can tell, of the organizations, and are responsible for then communicating through all kinds of reports and analyses what they see happening with those groups and what they think the effects of the airstrikes and the military campaign against them are.
Did they have any axes to grind? Were they political in any type of way? What brought them to you?
Well, they're not political, no. These are people who are paid to give their opinion, and like anybody who studies a problem closely, they're going to have very strongly held opinions that they think are based on facts and information as they've seen it. What really brought this to the fore, I think, is they have for a number of months now been complaining kind of quietly internally at Central Command that their senior officers there who are running the intelligence directorate are manipulating reports, changing reports, suppressing certain kinds of information that might suggest that the air campaign is not going as well as senior military officials and administration officials might want to say it is. And this finally came to a head in July when these analysts, an extraordinarily large number, we should say, for 50 of these people to come forward like this, filed a complaint to the Inspector General at the Defense Department, which is the Pentagon's watchdog. So I think this is really something that's been building for them for a long time. And anytime you have an allegation, a single allegation of this kind of manipulation of intelligence for even anything that has a whiff of politics around it, it's a serious accusation. For this many people to come forward, I think really illustrates how deeply they feel that this kind of politicization and manipulation is actually occurring.
Who's wearing the apron and cooking the books here? Who's in the kitchen?
Well, what they're pointing at right now is the officials who run what's called the Intelligence Directorate. So you're talking here about an organization led by senior military officers and kind of this cadre that, if you like, sits on top of the analysts and is sort of the layer between them and then eventually the brass at the Pentagon. And what the analysts are alleging is that it's that middle layer of people who they have the real problem with, who they accuse of mishandling and distorting the information. And as far as we know right now, that's also where the Pentagon's Inspector General is focusing its investigation on what's known as this Intelligence Directorate, or J2, out of Central Command.
Are they doing it because the political people at the White House or the political people of the administration are giving them the direction to do that? Or are they doing it to make themselves look good to those same people?
It's a great and very important question. We don't know for sure, but so far our reporting suggests that it's probably more the latter. And that with the analysts, we haven't gotten any sense that the analysts have been able to come forward with, say an email from the White House directing their bosses to say things a certain way. Rather, what they're alleging is that these senior officials are sort of being careerist about this. And again, they accuse them of writing these reports in a way that they perceive will be received more favorably by the White House and by the Pentagon.
This has got to be really tough for the boots on the ground intelligence guys, because the whole situation with Iraq happened because of bad intelligence, and those guys took it on the chin, and a lot of people lost their lives because of that war, and a lot of them feel some degree of responsibility for getting the intelligence wrong. Now they're giving them the correct intelligence, and then it's being doctored by someone somewhere in the bowels of the government. So it seems to me like they should really want to right this wrong. Did you sense that from them when you spoke to them?
Yeah, you're putting your finger on something that I think is really important and gets to also the motivation here. Some of these analysts that were involved in the complaint, we know, were studying al-Qaeda and Iraq in 2002, when, of course, the intelligence community was moving towards this kind of consensus view that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which, of course, it turned out that it didn't. And I think many of them feel scarred by that experience and feel that there was politicization and manipulation of the intelligence back then, and they don't want to see this happen again. So they're I think, sort of calling foul on this, or throwing the red flag, if you like, before it becomes an issue. And they really feel that as professionals, any time that a senior official starts to distort or manipulate what an analyst honestly believes the facts are telling him, that's just wrong and it's unprofessional. And particularly now that we're fighting a war again in that part of the world, I think that they are hearing the echoes of history for sure.
What has happened to them when they go to their superiors in the government and have told them that this is going on? Have they been punished? Have they been transferred? Have they been asked to retire early? What's been the response?
There are some that allege that in the past that it's been suggested that they should go ahead and retire, that there's been pressure to self-censor, some of them have said, which essentially means, don't do your job, is how they would say it. And we also know that they raised these issues internally before they went to the Inspector General's office back in July. So earlier, they raised these internally through the chain of command, which is what, they're supposed to do. They follow procedure there, and it wasn't resolved to their satisfaction. So they're alleging both I think a combination of people not taking it seriously, but also some attempts to even intimidate some individual analysts. And when they went to that Inspector General, when they went that route, that for them, I think, was probably, they saw as kind of, the last option, and that escalated things pretty significantly.
That's got to kill morale. If you're out there doing the best job that you can, trying to keep the country safe, and you're providing accurate information, and then that information is being distorted, and then you're being punished if you speak out against that, it's got to make these guys just want to pull their hair out.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a deep sense of frustration here. Even people who we were in touch with who are not directly involved in this complaint said, look, it sounds like what I deal with every day too. I mean, there really is just a kind of pall that's been cast over the atmosphere down there at Central Command. And this isn't just some small office. We should remind people. I mean, we're talking about an organization with 700 intelligence analysts. It is a military command responsible for a huge geographic area in the Middle East. It's running an air campaign. It's overseeing operations in Afghanistan. The pressure is absolutely extraordinary. Many of these analysts have been out in the field before, who've served on the front lines, who feel that they've seen their adversary close up. And so when they feel that they're not being listened to, or worse, the information is being distorted for political purposes, it's deeply demoralizing to them.
What's been the response on Capitol Hill, with Republicans, of course, in charge of the Senate and the House? This seems like it would be good fodder, especially heading into a campaign season, to start beating the drum on this.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming a political issue already. We know that at least one of the whistleblowers involved in the complaint met with staff from the Senate Intelligence Committee. And also it was reported today that Jason Chaffetz, the chairman of the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee, is going to be launching an investigation of his own into this as well. So you're seeing now action leaning towards investigations and inquiries ginning up in both the Senate and the House now.
In this political season, we've seen outsiders really catch fire. Donald Trump on the Republican side, and you could throw Carly Fiorina and others in there, as well as Bernie Sanders on the left. It seems like if the government is operating in this way, this might be a very good thing for outsiders running. Have you spoken to any of those campaigns? Have any of those candidates contacted you about this report? Have you heard anything?
Yeah. I've not spoken to them directly about this, but I mean, I think this is something that is getting raised. I mean, obviously, I've heard it coming up just even in interviews and talk shows over the past few days. To the extent that it would come up and become an issue, obviously there are people who would want to take advantage of this and accuse the Obama administration of manipulating intelligence, in no small part because, of course, that's what Democrats accused President Bush of doing in the run-up to the Iraq War. So the potential for this to become a political issue is there. If I had to guess, I think candidates are waiting to find a little bit more information, even than we know now, some more specifics on this, and ultimately the results of the Inspector General's investigation. The DoD Inspector General came out last Friday and issued a public statement confirming not only the investigation, but going into some detail about what it's looking at. That in itself is pretty unusual that the Inspector General does something like that, and I think it reflects them trying to get out and get ahead of this and be transparent. But there's recognition from everyone we talk to the potential for this to become a political issue, including in the presidential race, is high.
Fascinating report, Shane. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Happy to be here.
For more on Shane's reporting, check out thedailybeast.com or check out his Twitter feed under the handle @ShaneHarris.